Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 24th, 2012 edition of Nuked Radio. This is Jules today. I will be hosting at least for a little while. Somewhat interesting, Christina's been having some massive issues getting online this morning, not only with her internet, but with her cell phone. And we also have had issues with Skype not being able to connect to her cell phone, as well as her cell phone not being able to call into Orion. So it seems a little bit odd to me that she had published an article on Friday, I believe, on NLI.com called Fukushima is Falling Apart. Are you ready? It spun up all around the internet this weekend and received a lot of attention. And she was telling me just before we lost our connectivity that apparently there's some damage control happening in Washington right now with the EPA. So we'll have to get the rest of that story when she comes back. So our plan is that Christina is on her way to Miss Milky's house, and we're going to try to get her on a landline. But in the meantime, last night, Christina had invited two guests to be on with us today to talk about some of the things that they know about the EPA and the monitors. So with us today, we have Drew Lamb, who we've had Drew on before. Drew's working on his aquaponics project. Drew's out of Oregon, and we also have Mr. Ken Hildebrand of Information Nation here on Orion. Good afternoon, guys. You here?
Hey, Jules.
Hello, Jules.
Hi. Thank you for being on with me today, because otherwise it would have been me alone. So I don't remember exactly what Christina wanted you to talk about, but Drew, weren't you talking about some of the things that you knew about when Fukushima first happened, what they were doing, the EPA was doing with the monitors?
Well, yeah, last year I was looking at the EPA's RadNet, and something like they only had 4 out of 11 of their monitors functioning at the time. This was in the late spring, and there's a monitor that I pay attention to near Corvallis, Oregon, and some of the data had been manipulated or scrubbed or changed or whatever. There were days when the radiation levels were pretty high, and there was a segment of data in May and June last year that was just flatlined. And if you go to the EPA's RadNet website, they have an explanation for this. They say their scientists review the data, and if they think that they got false readings due to atmospheric conditions or radio frequency interference, that they'll remove that data. And I'm not a scientist, but I don't trust that they're looking out for our best interests, and I don't believe that all of those monitors needed maintenance, that they were offline, and I don't buy it that these monitors can throw off high beta counts due to radio frequency interference. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe somebody could contact us and fill us in on how that would work.
Yeah.
But on Energy News this morning, there was a report here. It says, government report, EPA's ability to protect human health with RadNet was potentially impaired for Fukushima. Officials questioned why there were dramatically less strict standards for radiation contamination. And it goes on. An internal audit has confirmed observers' concerns that many of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's radiation monitors were out of service at the height of 2011 Fukushima power plant meltdown in Japan. RadNet consists of 124 stations scattered throughout U.S. territories and 40 deployable air monitors that could be sent to take readings anywhere, according to the IG report. At the time of the Fukushima crisis, the critical infrastructure asset was impaired because many monitors were broken, while others had not undergone filter changes in so long that they cannot be used to accurately detect real-time radiation levels, the IG report says. On March 11th, 2011, at the time of the Japan nuclear incident, 25 of the 124 installed RadNet monitors, or 20%, were out of service for an average of 130 days, the report says. In addition, 6 of the 12 RadNet monitors we sampled, 50%, had gone over 8 weeks without a filter change, and 2 of those for over 300 days. The report adds, noting that EPA policy calls on operators to change the filters twice per week. Currently, EPA remains behind schedule for installing radiation monitors and has not resolved contracting issues identified as causing similar problems with the system in a 2009 audit, the report says. Until EPA improves contractor oversight, the agency's ability to use RadNet data to protect human health and the environment and meet requirements established in the National Response Framework for Radiological Incidents is potentially impaired. And it goes on. In Hilo, Hawaii, EPA had detected radioactive iodine in milk at concentrations of 18 picocuries per liter, which is about 6 times greater than the agency's maximum contaminant level of 3 picocuries per liter for the contaminant in drinking water. In Little Rock, Arkansas, the agency detected radioactive iodine in milk at concentrations of 8.9 picocuries per liter, about 3 times the regulatory level. At the time, the agency defended its statements that the iodine levels were not a threat by noting that they were below emergency guidelines established by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Documents the agency released under the Freedom of Information Act showed that some EPA officials, though, had questioned whether the FDA guidelines were appropriate given how dramatically less strict they were than the agency's own enforceable regulations.
Unbelievable. And, you know, I'm pretty certain that those readings on the milk were from last year. You know, I don't think they've been doing too much in the way of milk monitoring since they cut everything off in like May or June of last year. They were supposed to be doing it quarterly. I have seen a few elevated readings, but nothing, you know, that they've made a big deal about.
I don't have a mass spectrometer, but with my Geiger counter, I've got an Inspector EXP with a pancake probe on it, and I tested some soft cheese. I'm not going to say the brand on the air, but I got radiation that was 3 times background.
Really?
Yeah, I won't eat it.
Now, are you talking like cream cheese or regular cheese?
It was a soft cheddar cheese. It was like a spread.
Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't eat that stuff. Not a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with the milk, it's in the cheese.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you know, I'll tell you that's one big problem is the EPA monitors are using spectroscopy for when they pull out the filters and then they try to determine what the radioisotopes are. And that really is the only way to do it. When you have you know, just a Geiger or a rad meter, basically you're just getting counts per minute, and then it depends upon what your meter can detect. So some meters can detect alpha, beta, and gamma, but you can't distinguish between what wavelength particle it is. With the spectrometer, you absolutely can. So unless we can get an army of people out there with spectrometers, which, by the way, run anywhere from like $5,000 to $25,000, depending on the wavelengths you're looking at, we're never going to know what's in our food. So it's kind of one of the things that I have decided to do to kind of help the movement is, you know, we put up Fukushima facts back, 6-7 months ago. Christina and I kind of pooled our resources and put that site together. But we set up a little Amazon store, and just so you know, what we're hoping is if you ever purchase through Amazon, just use RadChick's store to make your purchases. So she gets a percentage of, you know, like a few percent from Amazon. We're putting that into a pool to buy a spectrometer so we can use our radiation database. We've already built one for Fukushima facts, and we're going to start logging what we're finding in food for everyone to see. So I think that would be an awesome thing. And at least, you know, provide us some sort of protection. Obviously, the EPA and the FDA is not helping. The State Department, nobody's paying attention. All right, we're coming into break. So I think we'll be back here in just a few minutes on the other side. Okay, welcome back. I am trying to call Christina right at the moment. She just messaged me and said that she was at Miss Milky's. So,
Hello?
Hello, is this Miss Milky? This is Orion Talk
RadChick.
Radio. Yay. We actually made a connection. This has been very unbelievable, the issues we've been having today.
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple web pages up, and we got Ken and Drew with us today too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just so it works out, we were talking about this last night after WTF. Lots of news that was going on this weekend. I don't know if you covered the explosion at the chemical plant in Yamaguchi Prefecture. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to that story. In fact, I called Miss Milky this morning to ask her what the latest was, and I wanted to mention that she actually was on with Bug from Believers Underground this weekend. She did an interview with him.
Oh, congratulations.
And about Fukushima. So we've been sending out our minions, spreading them out all over the place, talking about this, and it's really awesome. And we've had the article that went viral, and in addition to being posted on M the Lie, it was on Rents, Intelhub, and Reddit. And
Before Snooze also, I saw with almost 5,000 hits there this morning.
And I checked also, the RadChick page was only up to date through Friday before that article came out, and we reached 25,000 people last week by people reposting articles.
Wow.
And I mean, it's awesome.
So do you think that has anything to do with your connectivity issues this morning? That was what I was postulating.
You know, I can't help but wonder, because I'm sure that article probably ruffled a few feathers, and had lots of trolls and shills responding on there. And the one sticking point that they seem to be coming back to was the 2.89 billion people that could be affected by one fuel rod being melted down. And so I wanted to respond to that, and I pulled up an article this morning, and this is from the Atomic Energy Control Board, followed by comments from the CCNR. The maximum permissible intake of plutonium by inhalation, and I had asked a friend of mine who works at Fermi 2, what is more of a concern, the radiation from plutonium or the toxicity? And he said to me that plutonium is so toxic that it should be locked in a box, never ever to see the light of day. And what this article says from the Atomic Energy Control Board is that, let me scroll down here, 100 grams of plutonium will overdose 1 billion civilians. Now, one fuel rod weighs 257 kilograms, or 2/3 of a ton, and it's 6% plutonium. And then the next question on this website is, if there's a serious accident involving 120 grams of plutonium in the form of MOX, how many civilian overdoses could, in principle, result? And, of course, there's a lot of variables to that as far as the jet stream goes and where things would rain out and whether you were outside or inside. But if none of the plutonium, 120 grams, if none of it was safely contained, there's the potential for 1,200,000,000 civilian overdoses. And I did the math for the fuel rod itself. And just as a reminder, we already lost one of those pools. And, spent fuel pool number 3. In addition to that article going viral this weekend, I've been finding some mutations around town. In fact, we've stopped at 3 different places over the last week, and in all 3 places we found severely mutated dandelions, and I uploaded a couple videos about that to YouTube. In fact, the one that I uploaded from Saturday, I think it's had 10,000 people look at it, and it's being posted also on Alexander Higgins' blog site. And I want to mention his site real quick, too, because he and Lucas Whitfield Hickson were 2 of the only sources of information that I could find besides Miss Milky when the Fukushima first happened.
Absolutely agreed. Definitely.
And he's been covering a lot of the fallout issues. And I did send the mutated dandelion video to Lauren and asked her to watch it, and her response was, this is exactly what I predicted would happen. So as of right now, I have samples of the plants and samples of the soil at my house, and I'm going to be taking those this afternoon and mailing them out to get them analyzed. A couple people have commented also on the video that, it could be a Monsanto issue or a Roundup issue, but, I can only draw from my own experience and having a yard for 17 years and before I understood the toxicity of chemicals and how dangerous they are to our environment, I used pretty much every chemical I could get my hands on to try to get rid of dandelion. And I've never seen Roundup do anything like this. In fact, I'd have to question the reliability of a product supposed to kill weeds that instead turns them into a monster plant with 6 heads instead of 1. So the video that I uploaded yesterday was actually from an elementary school in Dearborn. I've had 1,000 people that have looked at that video by this morning. And I will post that on the RadChick site, and I also want to thank all the other RadChicks and Miss Milky for all the news that they've been covering, because there's been so much of it, it's actually pretty hard to keep up with. Anybody who's in Japan who is concerned about this explosion at the chemical plant, the latest information that we have is that there were several thousand containers of depleted uranium on site, 3,600, and they are not in the same area where these explosions occurred, to the best of our knowledge, and this is being covered extensively on XSKF and on Fukushima Diary. So if you want more information about that, you can check out those sites. I did check the wind maps for Japan over the weekend, and Yamaguchi Prefecture is actually quite a bit away from Tokyo. It's pretty far south, still on the island of Honshu, but it's actually on the Sea of Japan, and it looked like the winds from that event are blowing into the Sea of Japan. So without really knowing what chemicals were affected in this explosion, it's difficult to say how much of a danger people are in that area. It doesn't appear at this time that the depleted uranium was affected. If it was, it is depleted. I mean, in comparison to the Fukushima reactors, the uranium that's in a reactor is 1 million times more radioactive than depleted uranium. Of course, depleted uranium is still dangerous and hard to detect. So a couple other interesting news stories. Some of these we mentioned on WTF last night. And one was a video that was posted about ninjas at Fukushima. If you guys want to laugh, take a look at this video on YouTube. There is either a guy in a black suit or a giant bird spreading its wings, and he's kind of hidden behind this berm of grass. But it's really strange. And the guy had a nice little Ninja Turtle music overlaid with the video, so check that out. There was a large boom event in Nevada and California over the weekend. And unfortunately, I don't have the website pulled up. If you go to spaceweather.com, they did some analysis of this boom using the seismometers in the area, which all happen to be right around Yellowstone. And they used the seismometers to triangulate the position of where this giant meteor may have landed. And what they found from the blast is that it was several kilotons, it's comparable to several kilotons of TNT, about a quarter of the strength.
Real alternative radio. We are OrionTalkRadio.com.
And welcome back to Nuked Radio. We didn't hear the break coming in there. We were talking about the meteor. Depending on the type of material that the meteor is made out of, They're usually quite a bit smaller than this one that occurred over the weekend, and it was such a loud boom. It was actually heard in Nevada and California. And on an unrelated or possibly related note, I found out this morning from another forum that they closed down the road going into Yellowstone last night because there was a sulfur spill from some bags of sulfur that fell off a truck and caused a fire. And it looks like the feds are all over that site. I don't know if they're looking for that meteor or what's going on there, but we're going to keep our eye on that story, too. Speaking of the feds, though, we have agencies that have been created for the sole purpose of keeping us safe that are not doing their job. And we shouldn't have to have YouTubers going out searching through fields of dandelions for mutations and uploading them and pleading with the public and schools to try to figure out why this is happening and whether or not it's a safety issue for our children. And I know Drew went over the article. It just happened to be posted on Any News today about this and the trouble that they've had with their monitors. And I had a story up here that I had referenced on a previous show, also from Alexander Higgins' blog, where analyzation of the 2010 EPA graphs in comparison to 2011 showed that they had been significantly manipulated. And whether or not that's a cause and effect of them not maintaining their equipment or changing their filters at the proper intervals, which they will not share that information with the public in terms of how often these are supposed to be replaced. I know Potterblog has made numerous requests for that information. But these are well-paid positions with full benefits. In fact, I went on the EPA site today to see what kind of job announcements they had. They're looking for a director of the Clean Air Markets Division, a director of the Compliance Division, a director for Testing and Advanced Technology, a director for Criminal Investigations, and a Congressional Liaison Specialist. These are all current openings that you can find on the EPA's website. Maybe we need to get a couple of Fukushima people in place at that agency. And I wanted to see what kind of benefits these people get. I know the woman who runs the agency that was awarded the contract, who used to work for George Bush, by the way. I believe her name is Patricia Bradshaw. She gets paid $238,000 a year, and that was just for being awarded the contract for the EPA. It doesn't include her travel expenses or any of her benefits. These are the benefits that, as an employee of the EPA, you could expect to receive. Federal retirement plan, thrift savings plan, health benefits program, pre-tax savings, dental and vision, medical monitoring programs, federal employees group life insurance, long-term care insurance, salaries with incentives, student loans, annual leave, sick leave, leave sharing or transfer, paid holidays, flexible work schedules, transportation subsidies, child care tuition assistance program, quality of work and life programs, employee assistance programs, and a fitness center and stress lab.
Wow. I think we should all apply for jobs at the EPA.
Yeah, these are extremely well-paid positions, and for a bunch of people that don't seem to be doing their jobs, I think it's outrageous.
It sure is.
And the only time that we ever really get the lowdown on what's going on behind the scenes at these agencies is when there's whistleblowers. Somebody gets fired and they get ticked off, and they talk. Like Lauren Murray, for instance. And maybe people don't know this about her, but about 20 years ago, she actually had her daughter kidnapped because she was speaking out against the nuke industry. Ann Harris, who worked for the Tennessee Valley Nuclear Agency, someone tried to blow up her car, and she's a very well-spoken older woman who has some lengthy interviews on YouTube that are well worth your time. If you really want to know what's going on in the nuke industry, listen to what this lady has to say. And, you know, she's just a regular person, but she knew right from wrong, and she didn't like what she was seeing going on at these plants. And one of her big issues was safety of the workers. And how does she get rewarded for that? They try to blow up her car. Arnie Gunderson, who used to be a nuke insider, was foreclosed on and forced into bankruptcy for speaking out against the nuke industry. And now we have whistleblowers coming out about Fukushima. Some of them are saying the books are being cooked. The numbers that are being reported are not accurate in terms of the water amounts being used, in terms of where that water is going, in terms of how radioactive it is. And the numbers that we know are horrifically high, so what are they really? And then, of course, I always like to bring up the example of Bandashevsky, who was jailed for 7 years when he tried to blow the whistle on how dangerous the health effects of radiation were on children's hearts. So we have another gentleman with us today, Ken, from Information Nation. And Ken, tell us again when your show is on.
Oh, it's on Sunday evenings at 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central Time on Orion.
And you had an article that went viral, too, from MLI, didn't you, just recently?
Well, I cover more politics than I do Fukushima, but I have been watching Fukushima a bit. The problems that we're having in government, it seems like there's a lot of people collecting paychecks, but none of them are doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to ignore their responsibility like it's a big game. And when Fukushima first occurred and they were starting to dump the water back into the ocean, they said, oh, the ocean's so big it won't have an effect. Yet you had fishermen who were, and these guys were like crab fishermen, who were pulling up crabs from the bottom that were radioactive. So don't tell, you're affecting the food chain. So let's start with that. You're affecting the food chain right around Japan and killing their food industry. Now you've got all the garbage that's floating up in California. And there was an article the other day about a young lad in Alaska who found a soccer ball that belongs to a young Japanese guy. So it's drifting this way, and the government isn't saying anything about it. It's just like every other event that happens, whether it's in this country or worldwide, governments try to shut everything up so the people don't know. And they can say they don't want to cause panic, but it's not a matter of panic. It's a matter of the people have the right to know this stuff. And they are not allowing the people to be informed so that they can take appropriate actions for themselves and their families.
Last week we talked about this, a Russian satellite that 20 years ago crashed in the Northwest Territories of Canada, and the Canadian authorities and the U.S. authorities actually put together a response team and worked together on finding the nuclear material that fell out of the satellite, and they were able to recover approximately 90% of it. But nowadays, that was back in the days of civil defense. Now we have FEMA. I mean, it seems like this is an emergency situation that needs to be managed in terms of the debris field.
I feel that FEMA is just another agency for people to hire their friends and their relatives. They really don't do a whole heck of a lot. They're not as organized as people think they are. There was an article published just 4 hours ago that says Fukushima air to stay radioactive till 2022. And this one comes out of the Japanese Times. And they are also saying that they're talking about 20 years from, or 10 years from now, that they'll still be, it will exceed 50 millisieverts in areas like Futaba and Akuma. And they're the other towns that have radiation leaking plants. This is a worldwide disaster, and the governments are covering it up. And it needs to be that's why your article is drawing so much attention, is because the government is going, oh, somebody's watching. We better really start looking into this. So it'll be one of two things. Either they'll come out with some kind of a statement. Well, one of three things. They'll come out with some kind of a statement. They'll try to shut you up, or they'll just ignore it altogether. And the people will be left in the dark again. This is what governments do. They keep people quiet. And
well, the first show you and I did together a few months ago was after I was SWAT teamed by a group of policemen following a show that I did for Popeye on Federal Jack, where I said multiple times the government is killing babies.
Christina, I think we're coming into break.
And we are back with Nuked Radio, and I want to thank Miss Milky again for letting me to come over to her house this morning, because if not, I would have had to go up to Caribou, and I'm still in my pajamas. So, thank you, Miss Milky. Ken and I were just talking when we went into break. The first show that he and I did together was a couple days after I had gone on Popeye's show on Federal Jack and said the government's killing babies, and explained the Fukushima situation to Federal Jack's listeners. And 2 days later, my boyfriend and I are sitting in his car, and we had just come back from the Army-Navy surplus store where we had checked out respirators and stuff like that. And we got SWAT teamed. We had 3 different agencies, three different locales that descended upon us like we had just robbed a bank. They blocked us in, wouldn't let us get out of their car. We were surrounded by cops. There were 6 or 7 regular cops there and 2 undercovers, and they kept us outside for 3 hours asking all kinds of crazy questions. It seemed like they didn't even really know why they were there. And in the end, they ended up arresting my 18-year-old daughter because she was with somebody 7 months before that had stolen a CD from Walmart. And the agency that they called was actually another district. And when they came to pick her up, and it was after midnight by that time, they were like, what is going on here? This is highly unusual. I mean, it was total intimidation. And I've had some other police issues since then, and so have my kids. And it's not going to deter us in any way. I will not stop talking about this subject.
Well, that's
and
what
if I can't get online here, then I will find a place to get online to keep this information going, especially if we're riding a wave of information and having people pay attention to this.
That's what the government does, though. They will try to intimidate somebody to get them to stop talking. If that doesn't, they'll try other things. You know, they'll cut off your communications. They'll do whatever they want. And this is why a lot of times on my show I talk to people about you've got to get aware of what the government's doing. Because if you don't, you're never going to know anything. You're going to be just kept in the dark constantly. And this is going on. You look at any of the whistleblowers out there, and you look at their stories, and you will find government intimidation involved in every single case. And if it gets to one point, I can't remember who the man was a while back, who they found wandering the streets, and he ended up dying. You know,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. The one up in Baltimore?
Yeah.
That they found in the garbage dump, and he had been a high-level government official that dealt with black ops and stuff. Yeah, that was weird. Or maybe it was nuclear weapons or biological weapons, something like that. Yeah, that whole thing was odd.
But whatever
Wheeler, I think Wheeler was his name.
Yes, that was his name.
Yeah.
It was a very disturbing story, too, because he was caught on some closed-circuit cameras, like in a parking garage, and he was obviously very disoriented prior to his disappearance, like someone had hit him over the head or
he had one shoe on, didn't he? He was walking around with one shoe.
But this is what government does, and people will sit back and say, you're crazy, but there are too many incidences of this happening to people. You know, first they'll try to intimidate you, then, like I say, they'll cut off communications, then they'll try to destroy your reputation. And, you know, they'll fabricate something along the way. They will try. If you really get under, you'll know when you're under their skin and on the right track is when they start really applying the pressure to get you to shut up. And at that point there, it's kind of too late to shut up because all the information is out anyhow. But the government is very well known for that. Look at it this way. We have an Environmental Protection Agency right now that hasn't told us anything. They know what's going on. I had Holland van den Nieuwenhof on my show, not this past Sunday, the Sunday before. It was amazing how they could get no video of Oklahoma City because all the video cameras were down. You got the same thing with the World Trade Center. It is amazing to me how all of a sudden, for the Pentagon on 9/11, oh, well, all the tapes were being changed at the same time, and people buy it. You cannot rely on the information that you get from your government. I'm sorry to say, you can't. You've got to rely on the people who are out there, actual boots on the ground, that are looking at these issues with Fukushima, that are putting the reports out there. And it's your alternative news, because you sure as heck aren't hearing it from ABC, NBC, CBS, PMS, NBC, or any of the rest of them. It's coming from people like you, who are boots on the ground, looking at this thing, finding out the information, and putting it out there. That's why they want to shut up the internet, because the internet is getting under their skin. And when it gets under their skin, they get aggravated. And then they turn around and say, how can we shut these people up? Because we can't let them know what we're talking about, what we're doing. They don't care about the American people. They don't care about any people. They care about themselves. Mm-hmm. As far as the government goes, and having a government job, look at the GSA scandal that's just starting now with the parties. That's the tip of the iceberg. They waste more money. People don't realize how much $1 trillion is, and we're $15 trillion in debt, and this money is getting spent. I mean, the money is phenomenal, and they're not going to give it up.
Yeah, those numbers and the numbers that are coming out of Fukushima, you can't even wrap your brain around them. They're so huge.
Yeah.
I never even heard of an EXO, a number with 17 or 18 zeros behind it.
And now they're talking about the same company that built the plants in Fukushima are going to be building plants here in the United States.
They already did.
Well, they're going to build more. I mean, I used to work, a long time ago, I worked for a company where we used to go in and do repairs. And anywhere you go in the nuclear industry, it says 2 letters, GE. They're all over the place. But they're going to build new ones, and they say they're upgraded. I don't trust them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just don't trust them.
Well, the other problem that I've run into, and I can only speak for Michigan, and I did some digging into this about 6 or 7 months ago, is I started posting about Fukushima on some of our local news stations, Channel 4, WDIV, and Channel 7, WXYZ, which are the 2 biggest stations in my area. And I actually got blocked from posting on their wall on Facebook and their individual reporters' walls, because I was talking about Fermi 2, and I was talking about some of the earthquakes that were happening and the location of that reactor. We already had a meltdown at Fermi 2 in '66, and that reactor sits right on Lake Erie at the end of a huge fault, the St. Lawrence Seaway. We've had problems at Palisades. You try to post any of this stuff and you get shut down. So I started looking into Governor Snyder and what his connections might be to the nuclear industry. Well, DTE, that runs Fermi 2, also is a heavy contributor to both of those news stations, and they were one of the top 5 contributors to Governor Snyder's campaign. In addition to DTE being a contributor, so was Dow Chemical, Blue Care, Blue Shield, Healthcare, and I don't recall what the other 2 were. But, I mean, they're chemical companies, and then they're health management companies. One is making people sick, and the other is generating income for the state. And people used to think that Michigan, we used to be the automotive capital of the world. The healthcare industry is now the largest private sector employer in our state.
Same here in my area.
And if people don't know to protect themselves and they get sick, well, is cancer going to save the economy? And is that what they're thinking by not telling people?
I think so.
When I've talked to physicists about this problem, what they've told me is that the U.S. needs to undergo full decontamination. The problem is that bad, and that was months ago that I was told that. And when Lauren Murray was on the show a few weeks ago, she said the West Coast is heavily contaminated. And the numbers that are coming out just for the first 2 or 3 weeks that the USGS finally shared with us show how high the levels are in Portland, in Los Angeles, in Boulder, Colorado. This is just preliminary data. We've got 57 weeks now of this stuff blowing over here. That was just the numbers from the first couple of weeks.
It's pretty
So we got big problems, and if we need to circumvent the government to fix them, I keep saying there's an opportunity here for a whole new industry.
Yeah, detox.
Detox and decontamination.
Like I say, I don't follow. I follow Fukushima to a point, but mostly what I follow is politics and the politics.
And I don't follow politics anymore because I'm always paying attention to Fukushima. So I appreciate you coming on the show, Ken, and sharing
a pretty good match then.
Your insight with us.
But the
and
government
Drew also, because I know Drew's been really looking into the situation in Oregon, and he is going to contact Senator Wyden on our behalf and try to get him on the show. He's been going around giving interviews. In fact, he gave another one this weekend about the spent fuel pool number 4 doom event. So it's good that he's getting the word out there, but I think he could be a little tougher on the NRC and the EPA and all these other agencies that are supposed to be keeping us safe and aren't doing their jobs. We will be back on Thursday. And thank you again, Ken and Drew and Jules and Miss Milky. You guys stay safe, and we'll see you Thursday.
Thanks for having me.
See you guys.
Possessing and caressing